Hey everyone, Mozeen here, and today I want to run through a quick Illuvium Zero beginner's guide for all you new players out there. So what is the objective of Illuvium Zero? Here you can see I've developed my land plot a bit. I have a number of buildings and paths connecting those buildings. Well, there's two main objectives that you're really going for. The first is to generate fuel, and so you want to generate as much fuel as efficiently as possible. The second objective is to scan alluvials that could be crossing your land plot for their biodata, and then use that biodata to research the alluvials where you can discover facts about them and you can discover blueprints based on the appearance of those alluvials. So those are the two main objectives. Some people might optimize their land for one or the other or a combination of the two. Kind of a third objective, for the next 6 months, you can earn airdrop points by playing Illuvium Zero. So that will run through January 25th of 2025. Now I'm going to jump into a fresh land plot so I can kind of talk through what that looks like and what some of the different aspects of the game are. So here we are on a fresh land plot, and a couple things to point out. In the top left, you can see the alluvial there. That's the number of alluvials that we have scanned biodata for. And then we have a blueprint, so that's going to show how many blueprints we've researched. On the top right, if we click on all of these, we can see the top three are elements, and it shows what our inventory of those are. So we have carbon, silicon, and hydrogen. And then the bottom three are our fuels. So we have krypton, hyperion, and solon. So these are all the resources you need to build up your land plot. You can also see I have 31 credits. Those you can purchase through the App Store and use those to speed up development of your buildings or to purchase additional builders. Right now it appears you can have up to 3 builders. The first one, additional one, is 120 credits, and then 400 credits for your third builder. And when you come into a site, a new land plot, you'll see a number of different plants. So the plants you can remove to give you element. They'll just give you a random number of one of the three elements. If they're fully grown, they give you the most elements. So you kind of want to let them grow if possible and then remove them. And then you'll have these sites where you can extract resources. So the crystal deposit gives you silicon, the outcrop gives you carbon, and the lake gives you hydrogen. So those are your elements. And then we have a Hyperion reservoir that gives you Hyperion. We have a Krypton rift that gives you Krypton, of course, and then the Solon trench, which gives you Solon. So the three fuels that you need. Now this is a free-to-play plot, and so this is perfectly balanced. It has one of each of the resources, so we can extract all of those. If you own a land NFT, you won't necessarily have one of each resource. It'll depend on the tier of land plot that you own. So if I bring up that chart, here you can see what that looks like. So if you own a tier 1 land, you have 3 element sites, and it may be one of each, or you may have 3 carbon sites, and then just one of the fuel sites. Now you might ask, so if you don't have one of the sites that you need for a resource, how do you get those? You can build something called converters in the game, and I'll talk about those. Landmarks give you additional benefits for that specific element or fuel. It'll be one of those 3 elements or fuels. And then there's a production boost for higher tier lands. And so you can see once you get up to tier 4, you really have a lot of element sites. You should have at least one of each of those, and then you have 9 fuel sites as well. So a lot of extraction that you can do there, much less need for using converters. Now let's take a look at all of the different buildings that we can create on this land plot, and I'll kind of run through what those are, these structures. So there's the basic ones. The nexus is the center of your land plot. This is the first building that you need to build to create other buildings, and as you upgrade it, it allows you to build more buildings on your land. So at level 1 you can build 9 structures, and as you upgrade it to level 2 you can add more structures to your plot. So really important to build this and upgrade it as quickly as possible. Next is the engineering workshop. You need this to build different other types of buildings, and as you want to level those buildings up, you need to level the engineering workshop up. Basically, every time you level up the nexus, you can also upgrade the engineering workshop. The quantum fabricant works very much the same way as the engineering workshop. It allows you to build additional buildings and upgrade those. So every time you upgrade the Nexus, you might want to upgrade the quantum fabricant as well. And this one primarily helps you with science type buildings and fuel type buildings. Next is power stations. You're going to want a lot of power stations. These help make your extractors and converters more efficient. They also power them up. So those types of buildings require power. Power stations provide those if they're within proximity of them. So you want a lot of power stations, but just one of each of these other three buildings. Next is extractors. So all of those resource sites that I showed on the land require an extractor to pull those resources out of the ground. So a sediment excavator, mine, hydrogen pump, those are for your elements. And then for the fuel, you have the Krypton Gate, Hyperion extractor, and Solon dredge. So those are pretty self-explanatory. These are the main buildings that you need to focus on getting up and running and pulling those resources out for you to use. Next is converters. So converters can convert elements of one type to an element of another type. They also passively generate either elements or fuel depending on which type you're creating. So a condenser plant converts elements into hydrogen. It also passively generates a bit of hydrogen for you. So if you don't have a lake on your land plot, for example, you might want to consider building a couple condenser plants to start with, to make up for that lack of having a lake. And then we have the same for your fuels, the L-Krypton Collider, Anti-Solon Inverter, and Hyperion Lathe. Those work very much the same way. Efficiency is important for these buildings, and you're not limited with these to the number of resource sites on your land. You can build as many as you want of them. Next we have storage. So for every resource, you need a storage building. So there's 6 different storage buildings, 3 for the elements, 3 for the fuels, and you'll need more than one of these. For the elements, you'll definitely want at least 2 to 4 of each of these pretty early in the game, and that lets you level them up quickly without being too expensive to get upgraded. And then you'll want 1 of each of the fuel storages to start out with until you start generating considerably more fuel. And then finally we have the Science tab. Here we have a 0-point transducer. That's capable of teleporting matter eventually in the game, so we could see fuel be transported from one plot to another as an option, as a future feature that they're considering adding. It also is required for minting blueprints. We'll go next to the Singularity Scanner. So you need these to scan your land plot for alluvials passing through to collect biodata on those alluvials. Once you have that biodata, you can use the materials lab to do research on the biodata. And so here you're researching the alluvials you've scanned, and you're discovering facts about them and blueprints that you can use. A data bank is very similar to the power station back here, but it is adding efficiency for your materials lab. And it also helps store biodata and blueprints, so you can keep more of those on your land plot. And the final building here is the Podarium. And the Podarium increases the spawn rate of plants nearby it, and it also increases the chances of mutated plants appearing. I'm not sure if that's for all land plots or only owned land plots that allow you to bring in morphopods into the Podarium, so we'll find that out once it's released. So here's my current land plot on the free-to-play testnet. One of the first things you'll probably notice is the background's completely different from the other one, and the plants are completely different. That's because this is in a different region. This is in Taiga Boreal. The other one was in Crimson Waste. There's 7 different regions, and each of those have their own unique appearance, but functionally, everything works the same. Now, a couple things I want to point out here. The first one is I have paths that connect all of my buildings. So as long as each building is connected by a path, they get an efficiency bonus, and I can show that here with the path bonus. You can see their time reduction is minus 10%. for all the buildings connected to a path. I can also click on a building to confirm that it's getting that bonus. And so as long as it's one continuous path, all of the buildings will get that. If I were to take my paths and remove a couple of them and break it up, you can see that now it's split. There's fewer buildings connected to this stretch of path and this section of path. And so these buildings over here are getting 6% time reduction, these ones 5% time reduction, and the way that's calculated is being connected to a single path gets you 1%. If you have 10 buildings connected, then it adds a percent. And for every 10 buildings, you get another 1% time reduction. And so with mine, I have 10% time reduction. That means I have at least 90 buildings connected. And if we look at how many structures I have 97 out of 102 maximum right now. So all 97 of my buildings are actually connected to the paths that I have. The next feature I want to talk about is the efficiency system. And so if I click on efficiency, a lot of these show 100% and don't really matter for efficiency. The buildings that do matter are the extractors and the converters. So if I click on one of those, it gives you a heat map and shows you what are the best areas to move this building to if I wanted to get better efficiency. And so putting it in the green areas gives you better efficiency. If I go into the white area or orange areas, if I had any, then that efficiency would go down quite a bit. And the power stations are what increase that efficiency. You can see if I were to move this power station away from that converter, that drops from 140% down to 132%. You can see that as you move them around. The maximum for most buildings is 150%. If you do have a landmark, which I do, I have a pegmatite swarm landmark, which helps with my Hyperion. Then you can see this is all the way up to 174. This one's 158. They can go all the way up to 180% with that landmark. The next feature is the power system. And the power system is important early on in the game. You need to have plenty of power stations to power your extractors and converters and your science buildings. And so you can see here that I have this power station 4, and the info shows that it's generating 2500 power. If I move this power station, you can see there's this tan box. Any buildings within that tan outline, even if just one square of the building falls within that, they split the 2500 power evenly. So if 5 buildings fell within that range, each of those 5 buildings that require power would get 500 power from this power station. There might be another power station right next to it that's covering the same 5 buildings. They would also get 500 from that power station. And so that's how the power is distributed, which can get a little bit tricky in some circumstances, so it's important to know how that works. And then I just want to talk a little bit more about the science buildings. So here you can see I am currently scanning for biodata. You have 12 hours left on that. The singularity scanner is more efficient if it's away from other buildings, actually. So you can see its efficiency is 100% right now. We can turn efficiency back on. And if I were to move just a storage over there, you can see that reduces its efficiency. So that's why it's out on its own. You can see the same thing for the podarium. So that goes down to 91%, whereas if I keep things away from it, it's up at 96%. So you can see kind of the heat map and why that's not at 100% as well. I'll turn the efficiency off and you can see I'm researching there. You might want several singularity scanners if you're really focusing on biodata and blueprints. You can have as many of these as you want. Upgrading them allows you to scan higher tiers of alluvials. And then the podarium is going to increase vegetation around it. And then another science building I have is the materials lab here. And so currently I'm researching some biodata that I found on my land plot. You can see I have one biodata. I don't have any blueprints yet, but I can come up here and go to my biodata, and you see I have a kaka, and so that's the one I'm performing research on at the moment. And similar to the singularity scanners, if you're really focused on blueprints, you might want a number of materials lab. Every time you do research, you have a 5% success rate through the materials lab, so having a number of them can certainly increase your odds. And then there are two other buildings that aren't in the game right now, but they were in the alpha that I want to talk about. So the first one is the marketplace, and the marketplace allowed you to initiate trades and find trades that other players are offering, so you could trade elements and trade fuels with each other. And then the other building is the holographic statue, and the holographic statue allowed you to display the biodata of the alluvials that you have scanned on your land plot. And the idea with that was to allow it to give you some bonuses on your land plot as well, depending on which alluvial you are displaying. And I think those two buildings will be back in the game relatively soon, so we'll see what happens there. That's it for this beginner's guide. I hope you found it useful and learned something. I'll have a number of other videos on Illuvium Zero, including in the next few days I'll have a video on the benefits of land ownership and what that helps with here, and another one on a full walkthrough for a new land setup. So if you want to see those, please subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications. We'd also really appreciate if you'd like and comment on the video so that my son and I can build up this channel. We're working on it together to help increase the number of viewers and help more Illuvium players out there. So I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.